Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Last Honest Realtor podcast. I'm your host, David Fleming. Thank you so much for joining me today. As you notice that we are somewhere different, and I am dressed like Mr. Rogers. Yeah, I don't know what that's about. But seriously, though, I decided to do something a little bit different. I decided to do a crossover podcast. Now, if you're of my vintage from the 1980s, of course, you think crossover and you think, is that like when the cast of Growing Pains was on Full House? Pretty sure that did happen. And of course, we all remember when Melrose Place was a spin-off of 90210 and the actors came back for another crossover. So let's do that. Let's do a crossover podcast. In all seriousness, I am on the set of my good friend and colleague Anya Ettinger's podcast. She has a podcast called Who's in My House? I looked over my shoulder to remember what it's called, and there's a little dollhouse, which is kind of neat. So of course you're thinking, we need more real estate agent podcasts. No, come on. This will be fun. Anya, believe it or not, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, is 20 years younger than me, but she's a phenomenal real estate agent. She's one of the top agents at Bosley Real Estate. And I think we speak to similar demographics in some ways and not others. I always look at her and I think, I started my blog in 2007 and people were like, who's going to contact you off of a blog site? And now people are looking at her and saying, people contact you off Instagram, off TikTok, off Snapchat? Yeah, they do. Society's changed, real estate has changed, and today we're going to talk me and her. And we have cue cards. Look at that. All right. How was that for a lead-in? Was that lengthy enough?
I'm only 19 years younger than you.
I thought she was going to say I'm only 19. I would have believed it. Yes, 19 years younger. And you have your own podcast, of course.
Sure do.
Did you like when I said we need more real estate agents with podcasts?
I think we need so many more. Do you know that my top comment is make podcast equipment more expensive? To which I reply every single time, can you be a little bit more creative?
Oh, that's a diss. Make podcast.
Yeah, they're like, well, this is so stupid. Like, no one wants to listen to you talk. So make equipment more expensive so that not everyone can have a podcast.
In my podcast set, I have the G.I. Joe bridge layer, which Isabella sets up every single time. I actually gave that to my son for Christmas. Sorry, Santa did. And then I stole it to put on my podcast.
Did he notice?
No, okay. He didn't. So here's what we did. Do you want to tell everyone what we did? This is cool. So Anya's introduced me to this thing called what was it called?
AI?
That's a joke. I'm trying to joke. I'm old. That's my whole thing. That's going to be my shtick today.
I kind of introduced you to ChatGPT. You knew what it was, but I was present when you used it for the first time.
Yeah. I asked it some wild questions. Actually, my kids like asking ChatGPT questions, but...
Did you teach them that it's a magic 8-ball? Because that's what you thought it was the first time?
I did, yeah. I thought I was going to answer questions I had about the universe. So, no, we thought... I'm going to give Anya credit. Anya said, let's ask ChatGPT what we should talk about on a podcast. So, I'm going to sound right now like my age, but like you can ask ChatGPT, go to Anya's website, go to David's website, go to their podcast, find out all there is about them, and then give us topics. And they made cue cards.
Well, I made the cue cards. ChatGPT didn't make the cue cards.
I meant they, Anya and her crew here. So what do you think? What do you want to do? Do you want to go through? I got a lot of things in here. Some of these I really think ChatGPT does not understand Toronto real estate.
I mean, that's not even, like, these are just the ones that we kept.
These are the ones we kept.
ChatGPT had a lot of opinions on both of us. Thought you were very analytical, maybe a little nerdy.
That actually is kind of true. So I did read the notes and it kept saying Anya's angle, on the ground, in the know. And then it was like David.
Hidden in his office.
Right. And it was like describing me like I'm in a bunker. And it was like David, statistical, analytical. And I was like, so I sit in the basement of like some old World War II bunker, in Reykjavik or something. And opine on the real estate market. No, ChatGPT basically was like, you're young and cool and I'm old.
But you're pretty cool.
True.
You did get a new jacket recently that's really...
We're not going to talk about that. I got a puffer coat from Aritzia and everyone's making...
David's got a super puff.
Everyone's making... I don't know what that is.
Everyone loves it.
Apparently it's a thing.
Very hip.
So I think I'm going to lean into like the 45-year-old curmudgeon because your demographic is very young. And I think by the end of this, they're going to absolutely hate me and my opinions. You tell me if I'm wrong.
I think it depends. I mean, my average demographic goes anywhere from early 20s to people older than you. Like, I have a pretty wide range.
There are people older than me?
Wow. Isn't that wild?
I mean, I'm going to be honest. And so I did a podcast. Well, I don't know when this is going to debut, but I did one called Why Do People Hate Toronto Real Estate? And I explained why I think young people hate Toronto real estate. And I defended them in some respects. And
Is that when you gave me a shout out?
Yes, I did. And I absolutely hammered them in others. And then I got a message from a Bossie agent today who I'm not going to name names. And she was just going on about how much young people spend on lunches and Pilates. And she's like,
I know exactly who this is. Yeah.
Yeah. And she was like, well, when I was young, and I was like, you can't, once you say when I was young, you're losing all credibility.
Yeah.
People just shut down that argument.
But I think a piece of what she's saying is that people are spending money on lunches and Pilates and matcha lattes because buying a house isn't a top priority to them, or it already feels so out of reach that what's the point in saving that money? Like, I think that's the mindset a lot of people have.
I understand that, but when they then turn around a day, a week, a month, or a year later and say, I can't afford to buy a home, and I'm not going to name names, but the person that said this, and I did the exact same thing. Like, when I was younger, I bought, my big claim to fame, as you've heard, other than basically inventing Napster, was buying, Costco chicken in bulk and bagging it and putting it in my freezer. I did that when I was young. I have scrimped and saved my entire life. And she was saying the exact same thing. And that's how you got ahead. And nowadays, as we see, it's not really the attitude that the young people have. So that aside, okay, so is the Toronto housing market actually broken?
I'm trying to remember what your comment was on this title.
My comment was, this is where your demographic's going to hate me, because I'm going to speak like a 45-year-old conservative white guy. I think society is broken.
That was what it was, yeah.
I don't think the housing market's broken. I think society's broken. I think right now, when you look at Toronto, interest rates have gone from 5% to 2.25. It's a Bank of Canada rate. It's way more affordable. The average home price at the peak was $1,334,000 in Feb of 2022. It's down to $973,000. Affordability is high. What's broken? What's broken is expectations. What's broken is societal norms. And so I'm going to make this political, and I'm going to say, and defending the generation of folks that's saying they can't afford. When I was growing up, Canada had free healthcare. That was our thing, free healthcare. Now, it's not free. We pay for it through tax dollars. But over the last 10 years, free dental care, free daycare, free pharmacare, free this, free that, free everything. And what we've done is we've created a system where everything's free, but it's not free. You have to pay for it with tax dollars. And the net result of that is that 36% of the cost of a new unit of housing is made up of taxes. So if you took $1 million property and backed out all the taxes, and this is a study from the fall of 2024, $1 million property with no taxes therein would be $640,000. So I think societal expectations are broken. And listen, I love my country. I have a maple leaf tattooed on my back. I do. It's a true story. What, overshare? Too much? Too much? My point is that I took grade 12 economics. Did they teach economics in school? I don't know. But
I took economics in university. Does that mean I one up you?
No, I took economics. We're not going to go there. I have a minor in economics. My point is that, like, look, I'm out of touch. I'm 45. Okay, I was young once, says every old person. But do the younger generation, do they understand inflation? Do they understand the government is not the mint? The mint prints money. The government's job is not to print money. But for 10 years, and of course we had COVID, but for 10 years or more, this is what we've done. Our country has a massive deficit. Look what the BC government just did, and with the NDP government. They just rolled out the biggest deficit of all time. Societal expectations have shifted towards this, everyone can have everything. And so the net result of that is you have people that want to own. There's nothing wrong with renting. There is nothing wrong. People rent everywhere. But then, and I'm sorry I'm going to do all the talking, but let me get this last point out. You take a young person that, works at Bay and Bloor, and then they're like, I can't afford to rent. And well, David was on a podcast saying everyone should rent. It's a good idea. And I'm like, okay, well, where are you renting? Well, Bay and Bloor. So it's $2,400 to rent at Bay and Bloor because you work at Bay and Bloor. Why don't you rent at the N4th and Victoria Park for $1,650? Because you don't want to.
Well, yeah, a lot of it is about what people want. And I mean, we talked about this whenever you were on last, like 6 months ago. Mm-hmm. But everyone is like, it became a thing. You own a house, and that is not common everywhere in the world. It's a very North American thing that home ownership is the dream.
Yeah.
And so people think that it's an entitlement, and it's not. And as much as it would be great if everyone could afford to buy a home, it's not something that you as a person are entitled to. You are entitled to, as a human, having proper shelter and walls and a roof and being safe, but like
the right to housing, or Maslow's needs hierarchy at the bottom is physiological needs.
Yeah, exactly. But to own a detached house in Riverdale with parking is not something you are entitled to. It is something that you aspire to have and you work towards, but it's not something that you have a birthright to, for example. And so I think that, I mean, this sounds like so terrible, but it's true. Like you aren't born and have an entitlement to live somewhere, and some people have greater opportunity than others to get there.
Sure.
And that's where a lot of frustration comes from. But I think that the kind of like Gen Z cohort is no longer really interested in home ownership because it feels far too out of reach. And
But is that true? Because what I'm seeing is there's this idea, and it was, Matthew, when he was younger and first joined my team, he said, oh yeah, my generation thinks they're never going to be able to afford a home, so they're just YOLOing.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Now they're turning around and saying it's too expensive in this. Like, look at the example I used. If you take someone that wants to rent at Bay and Bloor because they work at Bay and Bloor, and I say go rent at Victoria Park at Danforth, they're not going to say, oh, actually, that's a really good idea. And if I took one step further and said, why don't you find a roommate and you can rent a basement apartment in Ajax near the GO train and commute every day, it's going to cost you $850, they're going to say, I don't want to do that, or the word should. I shouldn't have to. And when you get into should, that's where you get into the government should provide everything for everybody, and why don't we just build, World War II style, communist housing barracks? Like, that's what we're one step from. And I know I'm sounding like I should put my tinfoil hat back on, anti-government rant, but I'm just saying, like, this question was, is the housing market actually broken? I think expectations are broken.
Yeah.
And I think societal norms are broken. I think understanding's broken. And I ranted in my podcast the other day about, I said, my sister's a high school teacher. She has a kid that gets 6 in her class, 6%. And they pass them.
What?
You can't fail people in public school. There's no failing. There's no late marks. I'm not going to get into my whole 80s and 90s rant. But I think that we've raised this generation
When did that change?
A long time ago. There is no failing. There is no
failing.
failing.
You for sure could fail when I was in high school.
Yeah, you're old now. Older. I'm saying that this is what we've done. And so now there's no accountability. I can say as a parent, because there's no accountability or rules or discipline. And in my house, that's a topic for another day. But I think that that's kind of what we've done. And I'm not blaming this cohort, because we've told them. And then, the somewhat socialist liberal government over the last 12 years has said, you can have whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. You can be whatever you want, by a guy that's now living off a trust fund and dating Katy Perry and running around while someone else is left to clean up his mess. This whole generation is like, I can have whatever I want. I can do whatever I want. I can be whatever I want. And that's not the economic reality.
Well, I think there's a really clear divide with, like, if we're talking Gen Z, for example,
Sure.
there's the cohort that is like what Matt said, that are like, I'm never going to be able to afford a home. I don't care to afford a home. I'm happy renting, or I'm happy living with my parents or with roommates.
Yeah.
And I just want to go to Jaybird and spend $40 on a Pilates class
What's
every day.
Jaybird?
It's this like Pilates studio that's literally $40 or more for a class. It's insane.
I don't know. I don't go out. I don't leave my home. Okay, so what the media gets wrong about Toronto real estate, everything, like the market's, hot, they exacerbate. It's red hot. The market's cold, it's ice cold.
But that's the purpose of the news. It's all
Right.
clickbait.
Clickbait, and more so online now than ever before.
Yes, and then every news article gets copied and pasted into Reddit, and then people go absolutely nuts.
I actually was on Reddit last night reading some comments. Those people
Fascinating.
don't like real estate or real estate agents.
No.
So condo oversupply versus detached scarcity. But like this is, okay, so this is AI just giving us, I mean, is that a question? Is the housing market broken? Condo oversupply. We could talk forever about pre-construction. It's probably one of these other questions we will. Are buyers irrational or just tired? See, fine, good question from AI. Are buyers irrational? Yeah, I think some of them. I read some comments, and again, I go back to the word should, which is my most hated word. But when people say things like, well, this condo should be $400,000. If it costs $1,000 a square foot to build a unit of a new condominium, and people are saying you should be able to get this for $400 per square foot, that's where I go back to this society's broken thing, because you're not understanding economic reality. The cost of land, the cost of labor, the cost of materials, and the taxation. So if you were to say, well, economic policy is we need to increase wages for the good of everybody. Okay, now it's more expensive to build. Look what happened with timber prices. Look what happened with commodities prices, irrespective of tariffs. There's tax on that. It is more expensive to build. If it's $1,000 to build a square foot of condominium, and then society is saying you should be able to get this for X price, That's why I think it's not about the housing market being broken. It's about expectations. Okay, what do you got? Let's see.
Well, I mean, we can go back to this condo oversupply versus detached scarcity, because that does actually tie into the question. Is it broken? Because I think everything gets grouped together and you love your numbers, so you pull everything apart.
Love me some numbers.
Love an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
But whether or not the market is broken, like, people are looking at it as one whole as opposed to many different little markets, mini markets. Fair. So condos versus detached homes it's completely different. Strategy is different. Everything is different. Behavior is different. Mm-hmm. But when, especially in the media, people look at the market, they're looking at it as a whole. And so you could say that the housing market is, crashing or whatever terms they'll use in the media. But then last week there'll have been a house in Leslieville that had 15 offers. You know what I mean? So
is it asking, is the housing market broken? Is AI asking this in terms of, because I immediately went to broken in terms of fairness and affordability. Does it mean broken like, oh no, we're in a crash? Like, maybe that's another.
I think it's up for interpretation.
Because I wrote a blog called Crash, Correction, or Recovery, where I tried to define what is a crash, what is a correction, discuss recovery, and then a fluctuation. And that's, I'm plugging the blog post that I wrote, but it was to me, it was a fascinating endeavor because I could not find an economic definition in the real estate market. What is a crash? What percentage and over how long versus a correction? So maybe that's what AI is asking in terms of the market being broken.
So are buyers irrational or just tired?
Let's say that there's a building, okay, call it, Anya Lofts. And let's say unit 201 and 301 are identical. 201's on the market for $499. 301's on the market for $599. That's irrational, but that's what we're seeing in this market. We're seeing irrational sellers, irrational buyers, irrational agents. And then you were touching on that point, and I don't want to take the words out of your mouth. There's a lot of agents right now that aren't doing the job. If a buyer says to you, oh, this new listing just came out for 1.3 million and it's got an offer date. Mm-hmm. I'd like to offer 1.1. The agent needs to say, well, listen, here are the comps. They've underlisted it. It's listed for 1.3. It's got an offer date. I know the real estate agent. I've seen the way that she lists things, and go through the whole process. But some agents are saying, okay, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, like, at the end of the day, if the buyer is very adamant on offering below what you believe the value is, like, that's one thing. But I think the problem is a lot of agents are too afraid, to be honest. They're either too afraid or they have no idea. Yeah. Too afraid because sales have gone down, mm-hmm. and some realtors are desperate for business, and they will take listings at prices that make no sense because they just want to secure the listing, or they will help buyers who have very unrealistic expectations. Mm-hmm. Like, if someone called me tomorrow and said, I want to buy a detached house, fully turnkey with parking in Riverdale for my budget's $1 million, like, I'm going to have a conversation with them and let them know what they can actually get within that price range. I'm not going to be like, yeah, totally, that's absolutely possible. We're going to going to figure it out. Like,
so you think it's inexperience among the agent pool or fear?
I think it's probably both, depending on the agent, depending on the situation. I think there's so much fear for a lot of people right now, and there's also inexperience or just lack of confidence to be able to tell those buyers, or they just don't know that market. Tough
conversations. Oh, they don't know the market.
Well, that's another, like, there's three things it could be, or a combination of, right?
Well, I just got an email from somebody that said they're looking for new representation, and you've heard this one a million times. They were working with a friend of theirs who is, and I protect the anonymity, very out of area. I'm talking like hours from Toronto. And they've made 5 offers on properties and blown out. And then they emailed me and said, here's what we've done in the market. And they said, none of this makes any sense. So they get it. They're offering under list on properties that are selling over list. And they said, we see that this is a problem. We're not getting anywhere, but our agent doesn't. And so that, unfortunately, is common. And then the elephant in the room, which ChatGPT might ask, is, well, why are they using that? Is that person giving them cash back? Like, what's the, I'm going to date myself here, Uncle Phil on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. What's 100%?
I'm sorry, everyone's seen the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. You don't have to date yourself.
You've probably seen like the remake or something like that.
I've watched the entire show 3 times.
Like, I saw the original Running Man, and now there's the one with that guy from Top Gun. Fine, but Uncle Phil had a line. He said, what's 100% of nothing? And Will and Carlton are like calculating it. So my point is, there are people that will say, like, well, our agent was going to give us $5,000 cash back. Right, but if you never buy, You know, or if you overpay by $100,000, what's the $5,000? Or if you get the wrong house. So,
I have a story.
Oh, you have a story?
Yeah.
I have a lot of stories.
Okay, well, I didn't ask. It's my
Yeah, I deserve that.
Okay, so I had a listing, and this was out of area. This was when I was on a team. So this was not my client. This was something that I was asked to take care of.
Years ago, 4 or 5 years ago?
Yes.
Okay.
5? Must have been 5 years ago.
Okay.
It was in Georgina.
Oh.
I know. Anyways, but I did the homework. I looked at all the comps. I talked to local agents. So we list it. We have an offer night. We get a bully offer. Toronto agent. Mm-hmm. They offered so much above what I thought that house was going to go for. I was like, okay, sure. My client took it. She calls me the next day, sobbing.
The agent?
Yep.
Yeah.
She goes, I've made a horrible mistake. These clients are my friends.
Mm-hmm.
I fear that they've overpaid. I'm afraid the house isn't going to appraise. Do you think we could negotiate a lower price? I said,
my God.
No.
Wow.
Absolutely not. And she's like, they're my friends, and I'm afraid that like they're going to be so disappointed in me because of all, like, she's going on this whole thing. She's crying. And I'm like, listen, I'm so sorry that you're dealing with this, but this is something that you needed to look at before offering. Like, I'm not going to go to my client now and be like, hey, will you lower the price you accepted? Like, of course she's not. Yeah.
So interesting point that you bring up, because in all fairness, like, if I have a buyer looking in Georgina, I'm not going to do that. No. So to be fair, we're saying, hey, listen, your Uncle Fred, you know, who works in Timmins, he shouldn't be helping you to try to buy a house in Riverdale. But by the same token, we're not going out to Georgina with buyers. If I had someone who said, I really like you and I want you to work with me to buy a house in Georgina, I would say, that's not what I do for a living. It's just not.
But it's also doing them a disservice. You don't know Georgina.
That's my point, is that we would do that. But unfortunately out there, and I think the theme, and we're not going to try to slag on agents, and I don't want to puff my chest out and be like, well, you know, we're better than them. But we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of, on the buy side, on the sell side, the agents lack the inexperience, they lack the confidence, they're not having the conversations with the clients. And so this question from AI, are buyers irrational? Buyers are irrational, sellers are irrational. What you touched on is, if you've got a condo that, I mean, look, use anything, okay? Someone says, I want to list my house for $1 million. You do your work and you know it's worth $750,000. You do everything, you sit them down, you explain it, and whether they puff their chest out or cross their arms or use hope or wish, they say, I'm going to list it for $1 million. There are agents out there that will say, okay, let's do it. Now that agent is either hoping they can string them along long enough to get multiple price reductions, or the worst part, that agent is hoping for a prayer. Someone comes in and buys it for that. But we're doing them a disservice. And I don't know, some of your TikTokers will be like, well, you just care, you want to get it sold, you want to make money. That's my TikTok impression.
No, I get it. But just to then counteract what the TikTok comments would say is, well, but then wouldn't they think that you want to sell it for more? Because that's all people say online is the realtors want to sell for a higher price so they make more money. But
they say it both ways. Then they're like, but they don't care because it's not enough marginally. I get the argument. I'm just saying that if you're going to slag us for saying, hey, you got $1 million, or you got a $750,000 house, you want $1 million for it, and then we're not going to take the business because we don't care, you're doing them a disservice.
Yeah, it's not that we don't care. It's that often we will be realistic with them and we'll tell them, listen, this house is worth $750,000. You're going to list it at $1 million. It's going to sit on the market for a year. You're going to end up, and you're going to end up selling it for $600,000 because the market will, like, you're chasing the market down. You use that term all the time, but they're going to go with the person that says, yeah, no, you can get $1 million for it. And
we call that buying the listing. And I think we've all had a lot of those last year. I had this one guy, I think I told this story in another podcast, and I did a full evaluation and said the house is worth 1.3. And the gentleman crossed his arms across his chest, like, aggressively. And I said, I take it you were looking for 1.4. And he went, he listed it for 1.6 million with another agent, not an out of Toronto agent, a Toronto agent, but it sat on the market for 8 months. And it's not just to say that I wasn't going to work hard for him and get him every penny. It's that it legitimately is worth nowhere near what I said to him, listen, 5 years from now, it will be worth what you want. I will work with you from today. I will help renovate your house. I'll give you all of my ideas on what you can do to increase the value. I'll keep you updated. I'll be in touch. I'll go down that road with you. And he said, I don't want to wait 5 years. I want the price 5 years from now, today. So irrationality, that's a big one. Okay, let's go to the next question. Why don't you go through this?
the psychology of a down market.
Oh, This is what I think was thinking of. The psychology of a down market.
I think it knew that you and I both love to talk about psychology.
Why? Oh yeah, I'm an amateur psychologist. I love to dissect people.
The number of times you've psychoanalyzed me to my face.
I do that to everybody, to be honest. Okay, so this is so AI. This is what drives me nuts. Why buyers freeze when prices drop? Actually, I take it back, AI. That's really good. We should talk about that. Okay, why buyers freeze when prices drop? Can I slag the younger generation again?
Sure. What?
Okay, here's my favorite line from Wayne's World 2. Okay, when the Wayne and Garth.
Can we have like a quote counter? Perfect.
Anyways, hard work is hard. It's a line from Wayne's World 2. Hard work is hard. Hard decisions are hard. Why buyers freeze when prices drop? Because decisions are hard. Like if you're walking down the street and someone jumps out of a bush and goes, boo, you're going to freeze, right? It's the same.
Wait, is that like when I asked you to give a treat to my dog and then he barked at you and then you went, ah?
That's different. I have a very small Morkie and you have a very large bulldog or whatever it is.
Border collie.
What do I know about dogs? Okay. My point is, I think it's natural to freeze and it's natural to kind of stop. But what's unnatural to me, or at least what should be, is this idea that buyers are just like, I'm not going to do anything, and then I want to bring everyone else down. Like misery loves company. So let's say right now you could go out and buy a condo for $550 that used to be $700. If you don't want to do that because you are afraid or you can't make that decision, part of you is hoping that the market continues to go down to show you were right.
Well, I think it's also fear. Again, everyone is afraid. It's fear that the market will keep going down. So if I buy today, in 6 months, the market will have gone down more, and then I'm going to regret buying today.
But are you selling it in 6 months?
Well, but that's what people aren't thinking about, and that's what they're not understanding. So rather than buying it on the way down, knowing they're going to hold it, as every market is cyclical and it comes back up, they are looking at it like it's a stock, and they're refreshing it and watching it go up and down, and they're afraid that they could have waited 3 more months and gotten a better deal.
Timing the market's impossible. No one has done it. And, you know, I always look at whether it's stock market, whether it's a real estate market, look at the big players. And if you look at the big players and what are they doing, what you're starting to see now, and there's articles about this in the newspaper, about these big real estate investment trusts or a lot of family funds that are going in and bulk buying all of these distressed pre-construction, or not pre-construction, but under construction units. If those folks are getting in, the signal is there. And so my other analogy, and I've used this before, people like to buy on the way back up when it's comfortable. If you have a share of stock and it's at $100, goes down to 95.90, 85.80, 75, and you go, should I buy it? And you go, no, I'm not going to buy it at 75. It goes down to 70. You go, thank God I didn't buy. But then it goes up to 75, goes up to 80. You start to go, oh boy, goes up to 85. You still don't act. You buy in at 91, but it's still less than the 100. And then when it's at 120, you pat yourself in the back and say, I bought at 91. You could have bought at 75. You didn't want to. It's uncomfortable. People buy on the way back up. And that, to me, why buyers freeze when prices drop, I think it's natural. I think it's very hard to time the market. And going back to the people that are out there today, whether you're young or whether you're 40 and never owned a property, I think there's an opportunity out there.
You sound like an economics minor.
Why sellers chase yesterday's price?
It's the exact same reason as the one that we just talked about.
Yeah, human nature.
Well, yeah, and you latch on to the best possible scenario. So a seller in 2022 was like, I'll back up. I did a listing consult on a house and I told them what it was worth. And they were like, oh, but 3 years ago, someone offered to buy our house for $300,000 more.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, 3 years ago, not today.
So when people say that, I always say, if there's a share of stock right now trading for 100, but it was at 120 3 months ago, you wouldn't expect to get 120 today. Why is real estate any different?
I think it's because people feel that they have more control when it comes to real estate as opposed to stock. There's nothing you can do about stocks. You can't call whatever you're invested in and be like, hey, can you just like change it back?
Yeah.
But you can hold on to the false hope a little bit more in real estate. I think people feel that they have some more control. Still not full control, but you have a larger degree of control when it comes to real estate as a seller or a buyer.
Yeah, and I interviewed with a builder, and I usually don't work with builders because you know what they're going to do. I did a full presentation, how builders do things, and it was a how-to list of what not to do. We decided not to work together. He did everything that I told him not to. But it was amazing because when I did the evaluation for this house, he said, "You're missing the most important comp." And I said, "Which one?" And he gave me the address.
Oh, no.
It sold 3 years ago. And I said, "Why would I look at this comp?" He said, "Because I've built almost the same house and it's on the same street." So I said, "But why would it?" So then I said, you talked about me being a data nerd and AI thinks that I live in a bunker and crunch data. I pulled out and my laptop was hooked up to the big screen at Bosnia. I said, "Oh, this is a fun exercise." So I took the price that was paid and then I went in and I looked at all the different home price metrics and I compared what was paid at that time. 416, GTA, detached 416, HPI 416, and Treb 416. That's 5 metrics. Then I even went in and got the C11 price and I showed what all of those things would say it's worth today and what all of those things would average out to be. And it was exactly the price that I told him based on the comps. And then he just said, "Oh, it doesn't matter." And I was like, "Oh, it doesn't, you just," right? And this is what you're telling me is why sellers chase yesterday's price. What? Hope, faith, wish,
Yes.
denial?
All of the above. But also there is something about psychology that you hear, like you hear a price and you like that price and it's hard to let go of it.
Yeah. So this is funny. The emotional toll on realtors.
Well, no one cares about that.
No one cares. Does anyone on TikTok following Anya care about that?
No.
Tell me what you think. Go online right now. Go to your Reddit subreddit and just tell us how much you care. I'm trying to make my Reddit subreddit things.
No,
I basically
it was
invented
great.
Napster. I did. I didn't. I was downloading MP3s on Napster in 1990. Come on. You know,
That is the first thing that you said to me when we met.
But okay, remember Entourage, Johnny Drama, and he always used to talk about Viking Quest, and it was always like back in the day. I model myself. It's self-deprecating humor. I model myself. I always like to say, listen, I was downloading MP3s in Napster in 1998. Well, you were born. Okay, how most people buy on the way back up, since very few people take risks and can stomach the second guessing. It's funny. AI suggested that, but I think we got ahead of that. Okay, you have the same cards as me?
I
We already
sure
went through
do.
that.
Are we going to number 3? Are we doing some myth busting?
Myth busting in real estate. Oh, this is interesting. Oh my gosh.
I think number 1 is going to be your favorite
What agents won't say publicly?
because you and I happen to maybe say more than we should sometimes.
I mean, I named my podcast The Last Honest Realtor as a joke and like, you know,
Can we put an asterisk and like just second last so that I can be included also?
like Becky from Keswick filed a RICO complaint. How can he say he's the last honest realtor? It's tongue in cheek. It's based on the fact that a lot of people think that realtors aren't honest. So I said, okay, that'll be the name of my podcast. What agents won't say publicly. So again, if I could go to Storytime, and you've heard all of this before, I started my blog in 2007. People were losing their minds with the stuff that I was saying because no one had said it. And I told you this, we were walking for coffee the other day, and I said the first time I worked an open house, I watched an agent come in. This is the summer of 2004. This agent came in, she was a buyer agent, and she was telling her client, she was like, the countertop here, you could roll out your dough for cookies, and you could, and she went through the house basically like, it was like, you could sit in this chair.
That's literally, I've made mock videos of how like a stereotypical realtor would show a home, and that's like literally what I say.
It's sales. And I remember thinking like, okay, this is sales, but there's no consumer advocacy here. There's no, and like a lot of the people watching this, you know, your subreddit, Reddit people are gonna be like, well, that's all that you guys do. But that is what I saw in 04. And by the time I started my blog, right, I had the idea for it in 06, I started in 07, and it was like, I was going to talk about the behind the scenes stuff. I mean, I almost got fired, first of all. I had multiple RICO complaints. I remember once
But did anyone try to take you to criminal court?
Topic for another day, Anya. That'll be on your 2020 special.
I win.
But it's true. But no, I had RICO complaints. And one time I had 10 offers on a listing. And I said, I wrote a blog. I didn't give the address, but I said, here were the 10 offers. People went insane. And I've always said, listen, there are some things that you can't do. There are rules. But there's nothing wrong with having open and honest conversations about the inner workings of real estate. And I'm not afraid of those. I wrote about commissions before. If you Google it, you'll find it. I've written about multiple representation. And so what agents won't say publicly, look, there's 1,000,001 things I think AI wants to know. But then it goes into double ending, ethics, and gray zones. Double ending? I mean, there are places in the world where you're not allowed to act for buyer and seller. There are places in the world where there are no buyer agents and you have to buy through the seller agent. I think it's all a gray zone. And what comes down, ethics, I would say to the buyer or the seller, who are you hiring? And what's your goal?
That's all it comes down to, is who it is that you're working with and whether or not they're actually going to run it ethically.
Social media versus reality in real estate? I don't understand the question.
I think it's about, what's the term? Is it peacocking? Is that the word? Is that the
That
right
was in a
term?
book I read in my youth. Some of y'all know what book I'm talking about.
Okay.
It was called The Game by Neil Strauss. It was about pickup artists, and they were talking about peacocking. The guy that shows up at the bar with like black fingernail polish, and the whole idea behind it was that people are attracted to the peacock. I never wore black fingernail. You were saying peacocking? Yeah.
Is that the right term?
It is.
So I think a lot of agents that get on social media think that they need to display some sort of a lifestyle. They need to, there's also a word for that, inconspicuous flexing. It is when you cannot afford that kind of lifestyle, but you portray a specific lifestyle because you want people to believe it. So, the realtors that are posting online and being like, I did 80 deals last year, but actually only did 8. Like, that is a big part of it. And I think that goes into what agents won't say publicly is those same agents are the gatekeepers, and they are the ones that want everything to stay secret because they don't want people to know that they only did 8 deals. They want people to believe that they did 80.
But I know because I have a program called Redatum, and I look agents up and see how we're not talking about that. So social media versus reality in real estate. It's funny. You went to realtors, which, to be honest, I agree with you.
Yep.
There's that idea. And I went on a long rant on my last Honest Realtor talking about how if I was 25 years old and I looked at my peer group on social media and that's what I saw, I would hate real estate agents too. But I think for me, I look social media versus reality in real estate. It's funny, you went to realtors. I look at the houses themselves, like what we've done, and take staging as an example. We list properties and they are perfect. They are magazine worthy. No one lives like that. But when you look at social media real estate versus reality, it's setting a standard to me that's unachievable. Whether it's about affordability, whether it's about the level of design in the home, whether it's about the price of renovations. I think the point here that I'm looking at from AI, and it's kind of leading us, it's asking us this question, social media versus reality, is that they're completely different things. Everything, whether it's realtors, whether it's prices, affordability, expectations. I mean, right down to, an advertisement for anything real estate related. It's just not reality. And we're setting a standard that can't be met.
But that is social media as a whole, not just in real estate. And I think another piece of it too is commentary. I think people go on social media. Social media is a search engine. That's how a lot of my clients find me.
True.
But there is so much information and people can get lost in misinformation. And then
True.
You were on Reddit. There are insane discussions. People go on crazy tangents, and there's a lot of doom and gloom, and it's very scary. A lot of it is inaccurate, but people don't know what to believe because there is so much different information out there.
I deleted Instagram yesterday.
What?
On my phone.
Wow.
It's so negative and it's so bad. The stuff it feeds me, the algorithm, I go on Instagram. Like, I'm addicted to my phone like everybody else, right? Although, the people that are half my age is probably worse. I don't know. I just decided, I was like, I don't know.
I don't know. You really do you're on your phone.
Yeah, I'm on my phone a lot.
It's
I
okay.
just was like, I don't need this. Now it's still on my computer, my PC, because I'm, need to advertise and showcase listings and properties and that sort of thing.
Wow.
But I just decided I don't want to doom scroll anymore. All the advertisements are like guys that are like, I put this cream on and women thought I'd look younger. Like, is that what the algorithm thinks that I need?
I mean,
Don't answer that. Okay. 5% down in 2026. Smart or reckless? I don't understand what that means.
Neither
Smart or
do
reckless,
I.
the prediction? 5%. Oh, making a 5% down payment.
yeah, like, is it a
my
good idea?
God.
Is it a good idea to do a 5%
I thought they meant
down
the
payment?
market declined by 5%.
No.
Well, it's a leverage investment. So if the market goes up, it's smart. If the market goes down, it's reckless.
Well, I also think there's a misconception. People believe that it's like they're told that it's idiotic to put less than 20% down.
Because of the CMHC fees.
But it's not that, like, the fee is not huge.
Well, the problem is it's amortized. So for those of you that don't know, if you buy with 5% down, you have to insure the mortgage. CMHC does that on the back of taxpayers. Sorry, let me take my tinfoil anti-government hat off. So what ends up happening is it's amortized over the course of the mortgage. But you're not going to live there for 25 years. So if you say, oh, it's a $9,000 fee, but it's only however many dollars per month. When you sell it, you have to pay it off. So if the market, and I use the example of a $700,000 condo that's now at $500,000, if you could go buy that with a $25,000 down payment, and it goes back up to $700,000 when you sell it in 6 years, you look like a genius. It's a leverage investment. You pay off the CMHC fee. So when I was talking about affordability the other day, I was saying, if you were to look at a $400,000 condo, and I used the one that Alex Broad had at 549 King.
Yeah.
I wanted to buy that. It's just a phenomenal unit. That was $395,000, 5% down, 20 grand, 20 grand. Now, if you don't have 20 grand, my argument would be you shouldn't have the expectation to be able to own real estate. I think that's a fair point. You need money to buy goods and services. At least today you still do. But if you could buy that with 5% down and you're going to live there for 5-6 years, I would do that all day.
Yeah.
Smart versus reckless?
I think it's reckless if you are planning on selling it in a very short turnaround.
Sure.
A lot of people who bought in 2021, 2022 with 5% down and now have to pay to sell their property. I think those people are in a tough position. So if you are thinking about doing a really quick turnaround and you're buying the condo and you know that there's a chance you'll have to sell it in 2 years, probably not the best idea unless you have the extra cash. But
well, no one should day trade real estate.
No.
But I get this all the time.
That is back to, is the real estate market broken? It is. People think that they're supposed to
So now you're agreeing with me. It's societal norms and expectations that are broken and not the market.
I never disagreed.
Okay. So that plays into, pre-construction traps and assignment risks. You know why I'm feeling this way?
Take a deep breath.
If I am frustrated with one thing, it's that I was writing about this on my blog since I started in 2007, and I'll use the word jealous. I am jealous of all of the agents and all of the pundits out there that are now saying the things in hindsight that I was saying forever. So maybe your demographic doesn't know this. They're on the subreddit TikTok. I've never sold a pre-construction condo. I never in a million years thought it made any sense. I was writing about this. Okay, you want to go and Google pre-construction and cake and find a video of me on a shaky handy cam in a basement from 2009. I was arguing, why would you spend more for the cake mix than the cake? And now everybody out there is saying, well, it didn't make sense. Why would anyone pay 40% more for pre-construction than resale? Anya, I was saying this.
That was me. I think a lot of people know that you were saying that a long time ago. Anyone who knows who you are.
They were in diapers when I was saying it.
Okay, well, after this, we'll call all of them and we'll make sure that they know it was you.
Pre-construction traps and assignment risks. So this is clear AI. There's no direction. Assignment risks. There are no assignments. What are you going to assign? Your $250,000 loss? Pre-construction traps. We could talk forever about pre-construction. Let's just say it's dead. It died. Sales are down 95%. No one's buying pre-construction. Builders aren't building. The better question is, how big is the condo boom going to be in 5 to 6 years? Because nothing's being built right now. Your TikTokers are going to love that prediction.
But there are still people that think assignments are a good call.
To purchase one?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're building in a loss, I would buy an assignment. Look, if the problem is, and I've seen the assignment market, somebody's advertising that they will walk away from their entire 20% down. But then you look and they paid $1,700 a foot. And so now they want, I'm not going to do the math on that, but $1,700 a foot. Okay, so 340 carry the pi r squared. I don't want to go and pay $1,300, $1,400 a foot for an assignment. It doesn't make sense. If you were overpriced by 40% and now you're saying I'll walk away from my 20%, you're still 20% overpriced.
But it's also still substantially higher than resale, and you're still going to assume development charges. You're still going to have to pay occupancy fees for a year. I had someone call me last week out of the blue and wanted to ask me questions about the market and said my favorite question, well, what would you do if it was your money? Would you buy pre-construction right now? And I said, no. Why would I do that? He was like, what about an assignment? No. Why would I buy an assignment for $1,300 a square foot, have to pay a year of occupancy fees, development charges, when I could just buy a condo for $950 a square foot?
Which is what I was saying back when prices were. So back in my day.
Back when I was in diapers.
Back in my Johnny Drama, Viking Quest. Back in my day, Anya, pre-construction cost less than resale because That made sense.
That makes sense.
And then it became even. And I was like, the emperor's new clothes. Everyone's standing there and no one's saying anything. And I was like, hi, what's happening here? And I was like, shh. All of a sudden prices became equal. And I was like, why would you take on this risk and wait? Then prices for pre-con went above resale. And I was like, well, this won't work.
You were
no one will make sense.
in your spreadsheet.
In my
You were like,
code
no,
cave.
it's error.
Under the iceberg in Iceland, where my code cave is. So listen, I don't want to go too down the rabbit hole because, as you can tell, it frustrates me because I warned so many people. I lost so much business. People would call me and say, oh, I read your blog about pre-construction. I'm looking at buying this. And I would say, don't do it. I had people that would say, will you represent me? No. I could have made the platinum VIP agent
No, I don't want to talk
nonsense.
about it.
I could have done that and I didn't. I chose not to. And all right, what's next? What's in the cue card behind you? I got to get out of this pre-construction situation here.
What Toronto buyers regret most?
Going to the Leafs game and paying money for that nonsense. Oh, sorry. Oh, you meant real estate. Buying too small. I mean, I'm very upfront about the costs. I always say to people, you're going to have to pay real estate fees, land transfer tax, legal fees, moving costs. Your couch doesn't fit. My uncle once told me, you always buy the biggest house you can possibly afford. Mm-hmm. Because, well, for a number of reasons. Here, you're not buying too small, thank you AI. But I would also say because it's a leveraged investment, why wouldn't you? And I said afford. You get the longest amount of time out of it. You get the highest amount of appreciation. Buying too small, yeah. I mean, that is what buyers do regret. And then when they have to go resell it, they're going to feel it.
I think there's actually a good example here. We don't need to talk about the specific house, but you may recall my clients bought a house in Leslieville a couple weeks ago. We talked about it.
Yes.
They bought a house that needs some work, but was huge. Some of the other houses that we saw were very tight and they would very quickly outgrow, but were beautifully done, had really nice finishes, were turnkey.
Yeah.
And those were the houses that got 10 to 15 offers, whereas we were up against 5 or 6. And it was because a lot of buyers nowadays are drooling over the finishes and how the house looks as opposed to focusing on the space. And my clients have a baby and we're like, well, if we expand our family, we're not going to fit in this house anymore. So we'd rather buy the house that we can grow into as opposed to the house that we're going to grow out of in less than 5 years and then have to deal with the hassle of selling with toddlers. I think people are really focusing too much on what the house looks like and not focusing on whether or not the space will work for them long term. If they, say in 5 years, the price didn't go up enough and they aren't going to make a profit, they don't want to sell.
Or they lose, let's be honest.
Yeah,
That's happened.
or they lose.
We've seen that.
But now they're stuck because they're stuck in a house that's too small for them because they focus too much on what the house looked like as opposed to the space.
And we're seeing that a lot, and we won't name names. There was the one that was actually one of our offices listing. And I remember it was a 15 by 100 foot lot. I'm like, okay, it's narrow, it's short. It looked amazing.
Amazing.
And so on the list side, kudos to whether it's me or you or a colleague or whoever for staging a property and getting the highest possible price for it.
Absolutely.
Working in the best interest of the seller client. But do you want to be on the buy side of that one?
No.
Because that's a tiny house. And so I think you and I have both talked off camera about clients that we've had. And I had one that bought not too far away from you that was, we like this house because the footprint is big, the basement has good ceiling height, and it's not in good shape. And it was like, sorry, you like it because it's not in good shape? We don't want to pay for someone else's finishes.
Yep.
We don't want to be in competition. We want the ugly thing that the masses don't want. And I think there's, in any market, if you can sort of go contrarian or go against the tide, I think that buying too small is something that we have seen. And I got a call this morning from clients that bought a 2-bed, 2-bath condo back when they could have afforded a house. And they wanted it for the lifestyle. And I remember we had the conversation, and now they're going to be selling that and buying the house. And they were like, yeah, okay, you were right. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I'm saying they were kind of joking about it, and they love the lifestyle. Absolutely love the lifestyle. They're like, we wouldn't trade it for anything. But they understand that it costs them money. And a caveat to that, my wife's uncle has a great line. Not everything has to make perfect economic sense, which is funny for somebody that works in wealth to say. The point is, there are intangibles. You might have made more money had you done something else, but did you enjoy it? Would you trade that for anything?
And I think that's where a lot of focus gets lost in real estate is people have gotten way too focused on the money.
Yeah.
And far less focused on the experience and whether or not they're happy in their homes. Are you buying somewhere? Like, I've had so many people reach out to me and be like, what neighborhood do you think will appreciate the most? I was
Oh,
like,
I hate that question.
well, where do you want to live?
Yeah, where do you want
to
to
live?
live?
Do you want to live in the
Yeah.
neighborhood that might appreciate the most, or do you want to live in the neighborhood that will make you the happiest? Maybe you make a little bit less money, but
Yeah.
is it worth, a longer commute or not enjoying where you are?
Yeah, Woodstock's great. I think their appreciation's fantastic. Do you want to do that commute?
Where even is that?
It's a pretty great question. So
Somewhere that way.
it's one of those. Yeah. So I always use myself as an example. So I stayed in my condo. I sold houses to all my friends. And for me at that point in my life, I was working 7 days a week. And I was working.
Sorry, don't you still do that maybe?
Well, yes, but I mean, I was actually, anyways, we're not going to get into the personal life side of things, but like when I was in like my early to mid 30s, yeah, I was working nonstop, but I had the condo and it was that central hub and it was great for accessibility and, great relationship with my wife, then fiance, girlfriend, whatever. But it was like, you could just, you get home late and it was just a central hub and it made sense. And I liked the lifestyle. I would have made way more money if I'd gone and bought any freehold in the city, but I needed that because I was working 78 hours a week and I don't regret it because it's what I needed at the time. And I remember selling a house to my friend for $999. He ended up selling it for $2.45 million, right? Is it any wonder why people got wealthy in the last 10 years in real estate? But you know what? Had I done something like that, it'd be a different story, but I wanted the condo. I love the condo. I wouldn't change it for a thing. I would not. I brought my daughter home there when she was born. So I think we've belabored this point, but like, I guess right sizing is kind of the term. Like,
Yeah.
Not everything has to make perfect economic sense. And at the end of the day, yeah, buyers are going to have regrets and there are a lot more on the cue card here.
Well, yeah, I think you'll be a lot happier if you focus on what will make you happy and not focus on what will make you the most money.
Emotional bidding. This is what I mean. I feel like AI picked up this term from someone else's website or blog or a media
Yours,
article.
maybe?
No. Isn't all bidding emotional?
Yes. Well, maybe if it's an investment, you're a little bit less attached and you're focused just on the numbers. But I think when you're buying a home for yourself, it's absolutely emotional. When I lost out on my first offer for myself, I could barely get off the phone with the agent before I started sobbing.
Really?
Yeah, I was so
We're
heartbroken.
telling those stories. The first time I bid on a house with my wife, I told her we didn't get it. And she said, get it back. And I was like, what? And she's like, get it back. I've already started designing Maya's room in my mind. And I put this in one of my older podcasts. And I was like, in that moment, I felt like I had lost my manhood. Like my wife told me to go and get the house. But like the whole process is emotional. Of course it is. And I think what Toronto buyers regret most, AI tells us emotional bidding. Do they regret being emotional? There's no way to do this without being emotional unless you're a sociopath.
No, there will always be emotion, but I think the question is, are you going too far because you are too invested, and will
Sure.
you regret that later? And often I'll talk to my clients and I'll kind of suss out, are they more on the emotional side or are they more on the logical side? And I have one client who will literally tell me to like pull him back when he's getting too excited, and I'll let him know like, hey, let's take a step back, let's think about this, are we sure we want to do this? And then like our job is to ground them, and if they still are really excited and they still want to spend more money, then that's their choice, but at least we are there to kind of help pull them back to reality.
So the flip side of that, story time, this one might not play off well with the subreddit people, but I remember once a $999 house in Riverdale. The last time you could get a 3-bed, 3-bath, and I went in there with a couple, and she was so nervous, and I pushed them. You can tell me that, it's sales, you're just after your own I pushed like I've never pushed, and I forced them to buy that house. They were so emotional. And the next day, she called me crying to thank me. Thank me. She said, if I didn't do this, I would be sick this morning. And I was like, oh, it's okay. Don't worry. And she cried on the phone and thanked me for pushing her, because your story is about emotionally carrying away bidding too much. In this case, they just couldn't do it. They couldn't pull the trigger. And in all honesty, he was fine with it. And we were walking around. The mother was there, I remember. And she was like, I'm starting to come around. I'm starting, but I pushed them so hard. And I remember this vividly. I remember bringing the deposit check over to the agent's house who lived in Riverdale. And they called me the next day and she was like, I was just really emotional. I couldn't wrap my head around it.
Yeah.
And that house has more than doubled in value.
But that's a part of our jobs, is understanding our clients and what they need. And you knew that she needed an extra push.
No, but I'm being honest, to my detriment, Anya. I pushed so hard because I knew better than they did in that moment. And when they called me the next day, and then the husband, well, fiance at the time, he called me a couple hours later and he was like, look, I really, really appreciate what you did. And not just for him, but for her. And he said to me, I couldn't have got her over the line, but you did. And that's why we hired you. And I was like, well, I mean, you didn't hire me to force you to buy real estate. Like, and I've struggled with that over the years. I thought about that. And like, yes, their houses, I appraised it for them about 2 years ago for 2.2. So it's probably worth somewhere over that. They haven't moved, but I did struggle with that. I was like, man, I really, but they were so emotional. So I think in this case, yeah, they would have regretted not buying it, but move on to the next one. I'm interested. What's the next card here? This is wild.
Or new card. Okay.
There's so much on this one.
The future of Toronto housing.
The Jetsons. Do you even know what that show was? It was also from...
I was waiting for the quote. Go ahead.
No, but like the Jetsons legitimately predicted FaceTime, and like I think we're gonna have monorails.
Simpsons predict all sorts of stuff too.
I can't watch a cartoon because I'm an adult. Are you one of those adults that watches cartoons?
No.
Like I have the one buddy that's always, oh, have you seen this show? And I'm like, is it a cartoon? There's just something about that.
You didn't watch K-pop Demon Hunters with Maya?
No, she's afraid of it. I'm just saying. So the Jetsons, I take everything in the future from the Jetsons. We're going to have monorails, the future of Toronto housing.
Wait, should we find our crystal ball?
No, mine's at home. This is what AI says. Position this as a serious industry conversation, not doom, not hype. Thanks, AI. So forward looking, will condos recover? Will detached ever correct meaningfully?
To which you said that assumes it's incorrect.
Yeah, that's true. I did say that. Purpose-built rentals, foreign investment impact, and then if you want to get me talking and never shut me up, policy failures.
Why don't we start from the top? We can leave that for dessert.
Okay. Will condos recover?
Well, earlier you said 5 years condo boom because nothing is being built right now.
Yeah, Reddit is not going to like that, but I think that when you look at the fact that there is no supply coming online 5 years from now, what's going to happen? So look, let's say that you were a farmer and you harvested stuff. Working backwards, you would have planted it, right? If you stop planting stuff, you're going to have nothing to harvest. And then you're going to have less to sell and there'll be less on the market. Use whatever analogy you want. But the reality is condos were overpriced. I get that. Pre-construction was massively overpriced. That entire house of cards fell. Folks like myself, Ben Rabideau, my friend, the economist, he predicted that as well. We knew that was going to happen. So take all that out of it and just say from a supply and demand standpoint, if you are not building anything, 5 years from now, there will be another boom. Will condos recover? Yes. Also, interestingly enough, every single real estate dip in the history of the city has recovered. So yes, it's going to recover.
I think people forget that every market is cyclical.
Yes.
Like that is just how it works.
No,
That's
they
how the
choose
world
to forget
works.
that. The ones that don't want it to go up. And we can talk about why people hate real estate later. Will detach ever correct meaningfully?
What did you mean by that assumes it's incorrect?
Well, it does assume it's incorrect. I mean, does a $6 million house in Rosedale, is that incorrect? That's not going to correct. You know why? Those people don't need to sell. They don't want to sell. And if, God forbid, one of them lost their job, there'd be a lot more people that would be looking to buy that house. And we've a million stories over the years, but I had a guy once from the States, of course, and they always know best. And he was telling me, and this is like pre-pandemic, he was telling me that to look at a red brick Georgian Tudor in Rosedale for $5 million Canadian, he said that it was absolutely ridiculous and he expected that to be cut in half. And his logic was, do you know what I could get for $5 million in Connecticut? And he said, quote, I could get a sick house that would be featured on MTV Cribs. That was his logic for Rosedale. It's just too much. So detached is corrected in the suburbs. Yeah. But if you look at Durham region where prices went up 87% in 24 months.
Yeah. It didn't make sense.
No.
It didn't make sense then. So here we are. But
how many detached houses did you sell in Durham region?
A couple.
Really?
Wait, detached? No.
No.
Row house.
So purpose-built rentals. To me, this is the future of Toronto real estate.
Yeah.
The problem I have here, we'll skip ahead to policy failures, is I don't think it's incumbent on the government to build them. The government's going to spend like $2 million a unit. And then they're going to, never mind, I was going to go off on a wicked, politically incorrect tangent there. But I think purpose-built rentals are the future. And don't forget, the CMHC at one point was offering builders 95% loan to value to build purpose-built rentals. So one of my side hustles is I did a lot of land assemblies with a very prominent Toronto developer who then said, why would I build condos when the CMHC is going to finance apartments?
Yeah.
95% loan to value.
Well, and also a lot of the unsold condos are being converted to purpose-built rentals because they can actually afford to build those.
Sure, absolutely. I think we need more rentals. And just because we sell real estate doesn't mean we're not advocates of renting. Yeah. Renting is something that exists in every single city on the planet. Everywhere, every price point, there's nothing wrong with renting.
No, not at all. The fact that people, like, there is rent shaming that exists is awful. Like, live where you want. Do you want to own? Do you want to rent? Do what you want to do.
So that's going to play into my story.
Okay, go.
So here's a story that's going to have a lot, and I hope that you guys have made it this far. This is going to tie into renting. This is going to tie into timeline expectations. My brother lives in London, England. When I visited him last time, he said that his colleague bought his first house. How old was his colleague?
45.
50.
I was close.
His colleague bought his first house. I said, oh, interesting. His first house. How long's he been living in London? His whole life. He rented for 27 years. He started renting at 23, and at 50, he bought his first house. And the takeaway from that, number one, is there's nothing wrong with renting. No. But number two is that at no point when he was 23, 25, 28, 31, 35, did he say, I can't believe I can't afford to buy a house in this city. But that's what we do here. So future of Toronto housing, you know what I'd love to see? I'd love to see more education, more understanding, more expectation, more understanding of economic reality.
More realism?
More realism.
Yeah.
Last question. I'm going to let you handle this one. Policy failures.
You want to let me handle this one?
Yeah.
The question written for you specifically.
I mean, there's a few policy failures.
Go ahead.
Every single thing, every single idea the government has had has backfired. Now, I'll say this. Strongest banking system in the world. Everything post 2008 financial crisis that the CMHC did to strengthen our system, effing brilliant. There's a dad in me. Although Maya says I do swear a lot. Everything that they did. I remember when you could buy a property with negative equity, 107% financing, buy $1 million house with zero money and get 70 grand back. The government, CMHC, they introduced minimum 5% down. And then it was 20% over $1 million. It was 20% for investment properties. It was stress test. It was increasing CMHC premiums. But everything else they've done, like the co-buying, right? The shared equity mortgages, like some of the stuff they've done is just absolutely insane. The amount of taxation that exists, the development charges, the HST, and not just HST on houses. A house is built of materials. There's HST on those. I mean, every single thing the government has done over the last 15 years that I've been following has ended up being a huge policy failure. And I want to say the land transfer tax, you guys have no sympathy, the ones that don't own real estate and aren't buying. But if you're to go buy a house for $1.3 million in Toronto, it's $45,000 to the government. And you have to pay $75 as a fee to pay the $45,000.
Oh, no, that's what kills me is the administrative fees.
I mean, I wrote this on my blog and someone commented and said, wealthy, middle-aged, white, conservative male expresses displeasure with social assistance. And it was like, I don't know how you gleaned that from me saying land transfer tax is insanely punitive.
Well, it's actually a barrier for a lot of people.
Right.
You already have to save up so much money to put down, and then now you need an extra 50 grand to pay in land transfer tax. Like, it's ridiculous.
So I have a question. If you own a home and you want to buy another home, but you can't because of land transfer tax, doesn't that mean that your existing home will not be released into the housing pool?
Yep.
It locks people in. I was talking to my brother last night, the stamp duty over there, which is land transfer tax, is upwards of 12%. And he said, well, that's to make sure that, Saudi sheiks aren't coming and buying up all of London real estate. And I said, but they can afford that. You know who can't afford it? The Brits.
Yeah.
The middle class are trapped. So in London, when you buy a house, you own it forever. When you outgrow it, You go rent a bigger house and rent out your existing house. You can't afford
Right.
the stamp duty. And that's where we're headed.
Yeah,
If
totally.
this continues, if Mayor Olivia Chow, in her 5th term, which we all know is coming, is going to increase it to 100%. Oh, man, that's a lot of money. 100%. It said policy failures. AI was baiting me.
Well, I think they're also failing the younger generation first-time buyers. I mean, land transfer tax rebate is what, $8,475.
It hasn't moved.
No,
It hasn't moved. Prices have gone up.
but the rebate has stayed the same. So maybe rebate needs to be a percentage
Yeah.
as opposed to, I mean, it's a marginal tax rate. Why is the rebate not marginal
I have
as
an
well?
idea. How about rebate all of it?
No land transfer tax, 0.
Well, as I know, and a lot of people who think the government's job is to print money don't know, if you take it from somewhere, you have to replace it. So saying to first-time buyers, you don't have to pay land transfer tax, will just increase the tax on something else. But that's the reality of taxation.
Right. So then it doesn't, I mean, having land transfer tax makes sense. Having land transfer tax be $60,000 with a rebate of $8,000 does not make sense. And then add on top of that, that you don't qualify as a first-time buyer if your common law partner or your spouse owns property. If Brandon and I buy something together, he won't get a rebate because he's been living in this house.
The spirit of the legislation is actually if you've owned anywhere in the world.
Or if you've owned anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And it is like so specific that I had a client who bought and his wife owned like a plot of land in India and they couldn't get the rebate. Like it was so
Well,
ridiculous.
it's their fault for disclosing that. I don't think the government would have ever known about said plot of land in India.
Okay, well, whatever. We're not
Okay,
getting
so-
into that.
So policy failures. Okay, so
Policy failures are huge and first-time buyers are struggling. We've talked about this. That goes all the way back to the beginning of, is the housing market broken?
Yeah.
And I think that we need a lot more education, proper education for people who want to get into the market. And like, also, why aren't we teaching people when they're younger how to save and be financially smart if they live in a city that is so expensive?
Well, I don't know. They don't teach that in school.
Well,
Sometimes it was.
maybe they should.
Sometimes it was just, you're born with it. I mean, back in my day. All right, fine. I think we'll
Ding.
we'll end.
We're
we'll
adding
end,
that to the
we'll end it
counter.
there. We're at the 3-hour mark right now. So, did you have fun? I mean,
So much fun.
I don't like change, and I'm also dressed like an organ grinder's monkey here. But
We're really, no, this was great.
I
Thank
do
you so
actually
much.
dress nicely. I just, when I'm doing my podcast, I like to wear one of my many Banana Republic T-shirts.
Do you though?
Do
you
I?
have a
Yes.
uniform?
Yes, a uniform. No, in the summer, Banana Republic shorts, T-shirt, boat shoes. Got it.
Yeah, but sometimes you throw in your Lululemon t-shirt.
We're not going there. All right. So 6 months from now, we'll do another one. So, folks, for those of you watching today, thank you to my guest, Anya Ettinger. Go and check out her podcast as well. I have not, but I do watch the YouTube shorts, which I find on Instagram. Mind explosion. I don't even know how that works. Guys, thanks so much for watching. As always, please leave a comment in the YouTube section below. Remember to like, comment, or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you here next time on The Last Honest Realtor.